we have to turn back to China. The Chinese government accusing U.S. lawmakers, including Republican Senator Mitch McConnell and Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, of inciting chaos in Hong Kong after they voiced their strong support for pro-democracy protesters. China did not name President Trump. That is probably because the president went out of his way not to pick sides. Listen.
Well, the Hong Kong thing is a very tough situation. Very tough. We'll see what happens, but I'm sure it'll work out. I hope it works out for everybody, including China, by the way. I hope it works out for everybody.
Chris Hill is a former U.S. ambassador to Iraq and South Korea and a former State Department official who currently works at the University of Denver. Nayyera was White House Senior Director and State Department Senior Advisor in the Obama administration. And Noah Rothman back with us. Ambassador, when we see protesters in Hong Kong holding up the U.S. flag, what does it mean to them when the president basically says, good luck to you guys?
Well, indeed. I mean, the United States has, over the years, over the decades, really, tended to support human rights advocacy. I mean, across the board, it's support of that. We have a president, however, who kind of prides himself on throwing away all the accomplishments of his predecessors, and in so doing is essentially saying, we don't care about that. On the other hand, it's not as if he's kind of become friends with the Chinese. You have to recall his entire East Asia strategy, which he calls the Indo-Pacific strategy, is to somehow encircle China and contain China, sort of a 1950s approach to the Soviet Union. So on the one hand, he said, I don't care about human rights. On the other hand, he said, I don't care about engaging China. And what he's really tried to do is to create a circumstance where everybody joins in this kind of Cold War type effort against China. The problem is most countries in Asia recognize the importance and the complexity of China, and they'd like to see a U.S. that is engaged rather than with these cartoon strokes.
Nayyera, I want to share what his Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said today, because very similar sentiment to the president.
So it's not that we're not watching it. It's a question of what role is there for the U.S. in that matter. This is an internal matter.
Wilbur Ross says it's an internal matter. Does it help the president and Wilbur Ross in trade negotiations with China that they're not condemning them?
I'm not sure that what Donald Trump doing right now is helping anybody in America, or certainly not the protesters in Hong Kong.
But does it help his relations with China, with Xi Jinping?
You would have to have a consistent policy and point of view and not be led by the day-to-day emotions of the president in order to have anything really move in China, right? We like to sit as analysts, and those of us specifically from the diplomatic community, and think that there's some broader grand strategy when there's not. This is a president who has time and again shown he likes strong moves by people. So even though Hong Kong is more aligned with our interests, right, it is part of the maintaining free markets. It is not an integral part of China. It's actually a territory. The integration is part of the problem, post-colonial project, yada, yada. We forget that Donald Trump likes these moves and wants, he suddenly is like, well, they're moving tanks in, so this looks good, this feels good, because it's probably the kind of thing that he would personally like to see and do with protesters here in the United States. This is largely driven by his personality and his politics. He doesn't like to look weak. For him, when suddenly markets take a dip, he looks weak. He doesn't want to take a hit on Christmas with consumer sales and have people upset with him. It is not driven by any larger understanding of how to actually do negotiation in China or the world writ large.
Noah, you've been writing about this, saying Donald Trump keeping quiet about Hong Kong, maybe to avoid complicating trade negotiations. If that is what he's doing, well, China's not giving him any credit for it.
No. Mainland media has been attacking the State Department and the CIA, saying they're behind these protests. We have a real divergence between how...
Say that again. I don't think our audience realizes this. So help us understand state-run media, how they're portraying this.
State-run Chinese Communist Party media has been suggesting, implying pretty strongly that the CIA and the State Department are behind these protests. And there's a real divergence between how state is handling this and how the president is. The State Department has dispatched diplomats to talk to these protesters. Those diplomats have been attacked and harassed by mainland authorities and mainland media, leading State Department spokeswoman Morgan Atangas to say this is the act of a thuggish regime. Great, right? The president, however, has been taking a very different approach to this, saying that these are riots and invaluable valuable gift to mainland media, saying that President Xi has been acting very responsibly. There's no rhetorical loss of face here for the president to simply express what are American interests, which is that we support autonomy for places like Hong Kong and Macau. We support their political authority and their ability to preserve the liberalized political regimes in these countries, and to fail to do that is an abdication of the president's responsibility, both to this country and to our allies abroad.
Ambassador, give us historical perspective why it is so important for the United States to support that autonomy. Go to my mother's kitchen right now where she's saying, I don't know, maybe it is an internal issue. Maybe we do wish them the best. It's not happening on U.S. territory. What do you say to those people who don't understand the full picture?
Well, what happened was, of course, the United Kingdom, Britain, and China reached an agreement. The U.S. supported it. Everybody supported it on the creation of broad autonomy for Hong Kong in the context of being a part of China. The idea, of course, was that if Hong Kong was successful, we would see some type of similarity in moving ahead with Taiwan. This does touch on very, very sensitive U.S. interests in Taiwan and, frankly, in the whole region on the question of what kind of China are we going to have in the future.
All right, Ambassador Christopher Hill, Nayyera Haq, Noah Rothman, thank you all. Definitely made us smarter.